All right, let's talk drive shafts. One of the biggest problems with putting an engine in a car that it wasn't intended to go in is hooking up the drive shaft, is mating the transmission in the front with the differential in the rear and getting power to the wheels. This here is the factory Lexus drive shaft. It's not gonna work, obviously. So what I did is I went on OfferUp. I picked up this Chevy Tahoe drive shaft. It's got a little balancer, in the front here, and I'm gonna cut this down and use it to mate up to the Chevy Colorado transmission that I have in here. So this drive shaft's gonna go in the Chevy Colorado transmission. I bought a new replacement U-joint for that, and the part number is, the Spicer part number is that. Then gonna cut this tube to length, and I found on Summit Racing, they have, well, you probably get it somewhere else too, but they have these weld-on drive shaft ends with U-joint ends. You can weld onto this particular size drive shaft that just happened to be the right size for this. I think it's 3.5, and the part number for that weld-on end is right there, the tube yoke. I went and cut the end of the Tahoe drive shaft. I'll cut this end again to size once I get the transmission mount in where I want it and at the right angle with the differential under there somewhere. Once I get this welded on here, I have a U-joint for it for here that goes on this U-joint drive shaft end yoke. There's the Spicer, also a Spicer part number there. And this will bolt to this, which I got from Auto Sports Engineering. It's an adapter that adapts the 6-bolt or 3-bolt from the differential to this 4-bolt pattern that this U-joint drive shaft end will bolt onto that. That when we're done, drive shaft will, this will go on the end of the drive shaft. This will get bolted to this, then this will get bolted to the differential, the front of the differential up there, those three things. So I've measured part of getting the drive shaft lined up and the length right is setting the angle, is making sure that the angles are right, that the angle from the end of the transmission snout here down to the differential are not too far off. The angles that I have measured on here are, I haven't got them on here, but the transmission, I've leveled the car also, by the way, leveled the car. The transmission points down about 2 degrees. So when I hit the transmission, it points down about 2 degrees like that. And then when I measure on the front of the differential, it measures up about 2 degrees. Measures about the same. So once I get the transmission, set, I also had to cut away just a tiny bit more. That was my first cut. And I had to cut away just a little bit more to get the transmission, these bolts for the shifter to come up through the floor a little bit, through the tunnel a little bit more, so I could get more height on the transmission to bring those angles closer together. And I realized having the transmission angle, the driveline angle, and the differential angle nearly identical is going to cause issues with the U-joints, because those were meant for having different angles, and U-joints were meant to be run with actually by the same angle but different elevation positions, and I may run into wear issues after a while, but I don't really care about that because they're easy to change, but they're stronger than these rubber couplers that the factory Lexus used on the front and on the rear of the drive shaft. So these rubber couplers, they don't flex all that much. They flex just enough, and the height of the end of the transmission and the height of the differential are slightly different, but as long as I make the angle down the same as this angle up, it will all balance out in the end. I won't have any noticeable vibration, provided I weld that end on the same orientation that this one is welded on. And what I'll do is I'll throw in on the end of the tube, whenever I get it measured, I'll throw in on this end of the tube on the inside some grease. It's an old hot rodder's trick. You throw in some some really thick Molly type grease. You know, throw in a scoop or two of grease inside there. Once it gets welded on and you spin it up, it self-balances the drive shaft from the inside. So you don't have to do what they did, is use balancing weights on these afterwards. So I've already made a makeshift sort of a quick truing stand that I'll get bolted to the workbench and set the tubes. These would get set far apart, but I'll set the tube in there, and then I'll get a dial indicator, and I'll be able to measure how true it is once I get this end on here and tacked in. It's still a little loose, but I'll be able to use this surface here to make it true, within the limits of that dial indicator, and then we'll weld it on and it'll be good. So if anybody cares, let me know what you guys think. Yeah, I'll be cleaning that. I'll be cleaning the end of that up. Again, it's a beater project, so it doesn't have to be perfect, and it doesn't have to be bright, shiny, and new. As you can see, my workspace is not bright, shiny, and new. So if anybody cares, any pointers, concerns, bitches, gripes, complaints, go ahead and leave them in the comments, and I'll try to get to them. Appreciate it. Thanks for watching. Later.